Hey guys, so post Tiny House Festival, I just kind of wanted to go through and kind of give some thoughts and misconceptions I was commonly hearing about tiny houses. Um, so overall, the festival was absolutely fantastic. There was a lot of talkers there that gave a lot of good knowledge. I didn't sit through all the talks, and I was only able to make it one day. So there was 2 days of talks that I missed. But it was really fantastic to be able to go see a whole bunch of tiny houses, whether they were from tiny house builders who brought them out to showcase them, or they were what they call DIYers, people doing it themselves, who brought their tiny house there in whatever state it was. Say like the gentleman on the bus, he has been working it on and off on the weekends for a year, and it's definitely not complete yet. Or there was the couple who came in with the tiny house that had like a 13-foot loft, a really big loft. But they were doing it themselves, and it's not anywhere near completion yet. So it was really cool and wonderful, and thank you to all of those who brought their tiny houses out for all of us to see. Because the tiny house movement has been changing and morphing and becoming more powerful of a thing, if that makes sense. There's just more people into it. There's been some reformations and some focus, and as it matures, people are working more on making sure tiny houses are safe, making sure they can go down the highway if you're going to be doing that. There's not really good regulations for tiny houses yet, but NOAA is a company that's working on basically a way to certify a tiny house so that a lot of building codes are met within the tiny house, even though it may be on wheels, which is usually the gray point at this point in time. Although some areas are minimum square footage for the whole house or for one particular room and what that room can be used as, if it's supposed to be multi-use or not. So that will slowly get itself worked out. And then comes down to building them, of course, as things are reforming. I still think it's really cool that there's steel framing now and more prominently throughout the world for that. Also, the big thing is getting a proper trailer. Now, that does bring up cost a bit. You know, like good trailers are going to start you $5,000 something or more, depending on what you want to do with it. We saw some trailers with water pumps and stuff underneath it. So cost has gone up a little bit, but then again, that's also a beneficiary to the people building the tiny house, because now you have a better trailer bed that's more stable and more can take a load much more evenly for this intended use, where other trailers don't have as many like cross beam sections and whatnot, and that's extremely helpful. Then if you're gonna go and have someone build a house for you, it's not going to be as cheap as a lot of people are talking about online. You'll see people talking about building tiny houses between like I've seen as cheap as $5,000, but he, I think, got a trailer for free and used recycled stuff, up to, you know, luxury ones being at like $40,000. Now, you'll see if you're having somebody else build it for you, you're going to start shells at like $20,000 to maybe $30,000 depending. So that gets you the trailer and the shell of the house, and then they leave you with the interior. And if they want to do the interior, it depends on what you're doing with the interior. The big thing here is you're paying for somebody's space and somebody to do all that labor for you. So that's why a tiny house can cost you $100,000. But if you really needed to keep costs down, that's when you do it yourself. But then comes the issues of, do you have somewhere to actually go do that, actually go build it? So that's give and take. I would say in general, I guess the cost for a tiny house might have gone up a little bit, but because it was not a big thing a couple years back, even more longer than that, the amount of people having to do it themselves was much higher, and so they are not putting the cost of their own labor, because it is for themselves, in with a price, because they're not charging themselves labor, if you understand that. Then another huge one that I kept hearing while I'm at the festival, people just walking around, and this is great that it was people who don't really understand completely the tiny house movement who were there, and that's who I think I was hearing, were saying, oh, so you get this house for however many thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, then you have to have a $60,000 to $100,000 truck to pull it around. Now, that is very dependent. If you want to be able to move your tiny house often, or if you're going to do what some people do, they set up their tiny houses so they can just go park it at RV parks as well, so they can go RVing with their tiny house, then yes, you're going to have that truck. Otherwise, you don't. You don't need to have that truck. You can have somebody move it. If you're going to be moving your house maybe twice, 3 times, 4 times in the lifetime of the house, you just have somebody do it for you. There are companies that will, like, they're independent moving companies who specialize in just moving odd things that you can't, say, ship. You know, I've seen like a lot of the big statues get moved by these independent moving companies. So there may even be services out there coming up soon that is about moving tiny houses and getting in place in people who have towed tiny houses before. Otherwise, you can just check with neighbors and see if you can borrow somebody's truck. Some people are talking about renting a U-Haul, but I don't think U-Haul has big enough trucks, depending on the gross weight of your tiny house. If it's a really small one, you know, like a 16-foot trailer, maybe, depending on the framing and how heavy it is. But if you're having something that's 20 to 24 feet, or longer even, I think they're making them up like 30 feet trailers these days. You're gonna be pushing it for sure. Another thing I saw quite a bit of is bigger tiny houses. So looking more, and I talked to one of the tiny house builders, and of Simplicity down Lyons, and he likes to say that he doesn't like talking about tiny houses in square footage, because the square footage is very depending on how big of a loft space is, how much you use it, what's your storage look like. So he likes to look at it just like how big of a house you need in length of trailer. And he was one of the first people to really push a 24-foot trailer, because he felt he needed more storage for the stuff that they do here in Colorado. He's talking about how his wife has like 5 to 6 different kinds of boots for cross-country skiing, downhill skiing, alpine skiing, just out hiking boots and day hiking boots, stuff like that. So he advocates more that you might need a bit bigger than you originally think, which is a fair estimate. So yeah, so sizes of houses are changing or variable. Whether that's good or bad, that's up to you. I think it's good that people are picking out what they might need. And that's one of the biggest things. He says, don't make the mistake of getting a house one size and thinking that's all you'll need, knowing down the road you may have kids. One other thing that I found interesting was that there was, supposedly I missed also a van that was kitted out for a living. What a lot of people, like rock climbers do is living out of their car. And there are people who are looking at that as, for now, a viable way of life, just at least temporarily or for a good time, just to do it. And that's really cool to see. I wish I could have seen more, because I am actually personally more interested in something like that, at least for now, depending on what kind of job I'll end up with eventually, and if I feel like getting more stationary or not so stationary. I watched a very, very great movie from REI. Maybe I'll link it up here. I think it'll be up. I don't remember. I forget. I'll link it. It's from REI. It was about a girl who was going for the record on the Arizona Trail, bike packing it, and her and her husband, and I need to get in contact with them to see if I can find out more about this. They live in a way where they they work for 6 months, and then they go and tour and just bike camp, bike touring, bike packing, whatever it is that they do for 6 months. Now, maybe not 6 months, for where I'm at in my life right now, but that'd be something I would be very interested in getting into. Maybe be doing a few more videos about some tiny house stuff and whatnot. Hopefully, I have a friend who is dirt bagging right now from right outside, and he is right now living out of his Honda Fit, so hopefully I'll be able to get a video in with him about his Honda Fit, because that's quite a smaller vehicle than most people ever live out of. Until next time, guys.